There we go. I should be unmuted again. So everybody else, make sure you've muted yourself. At the bottom of your video screen, there is a blue button. There's a microphone. Click on that. So there's a line through it, and then you are muted. This is important for the quality of the video that we're posting online. Type your store code into the chat box along with all the names from everybody on your store that's attending. So that way, if we only see one of your names on the roster, we know that everybody's in there if you've typed it in. If you're having trouble hearing through the computer, call into the conference call line. It's listed in the invite. Don't forget to spit. And then make sure when we're done with the call today, make sure you're sampling these bottles out to customers on the floor. We want to make sure that we're using the knowledge to drive sales going forward, as well as you can use these bottles to drive sample and drive sales post-call. So please make sure you're doing that too. All right. 101, let's get started. So welcome to Project Wine Knowledge, week 4. Dana is on PTO this week. She is moving. She is in a lovely new house in Baltimore. So it is just me today. So be kind. This is nerve-wracking. All right, so this week we're going over reds. You should have 9 reds that we sent out in the email earlier this week. Go on and have those open. Have your spit cup ready. Thank you for the positive reinforcements. So we're going to start out today with light-bodied reds. So there is such a plethora of red wine out there, and it runs the gamut from light and fruity to super big and bold and tannic and mouth-drying. There's just a ton of options out there. So Wine Folly has it broken up into 3 categories where we have light-bodied, medium-bodied, and full-bodied. So light-bodied wine, it is usually translucent in color. It tends to have moderately high acidity. It's known for perfumed aromas that are best collected in a large globe-shaped glass. So these glasses that we've been using in our tastings here, I had done some research for glasses that work pretty well across all wine styles, but a glass like this is definitely what you would want to use for red. You wouldn't want to go super small. You wouldn't want to go with a flute or anything like that. You want a big glass like this, so when you swirl it, it captures those aromas and you are able to smell and experience that part of it too. All right, in terms of wine process, so first, the red grapes are collected and sorted for quality and ripeness. Next, the bunches are destemmed, or with light-bodied wine, they might go into fermentation with the whole bunch. They might have their stems on there. They do that because it will add some more tannins. So with light-bodied wines that might naturally be less tannic, they add that to balance it out. The juice then ferments with the skins in the fermentation vessels. So unlike last week, where with the white wine, that skin was pressed out right away. In red wines, the wine is fermented with the skin. Then the wine is gently pressed off the pomace. We will come back to that word in a minute. The wine is aged in vessels for a period of time, so that vessel can vary. It can be anywhere from concrete to stainless steel to barrels. During aging, malolactic bacteria converts the green appley malic acid into creamy lactic acid. We talked about this last week in detail with Chardonnay, and we're going to see that detail in all of our reds this week. And then lastly, wines are clarified, bottled, and released shortly thereafter. This is a little bit of a differentiator from some of the other reds that we go over today. The light-bodied reds are released pretty quickly after they've been bottled, so they're drink a little bit more fresh. All right, so let's pause for a second and talk about pomace. What is pomace? So pomace is the stuff left over after gently squeezing the grapes in a pneumatic wine press. So it's basically, when we talked about the lees last week, where the lees is what's left over from the yeast fermentation, pomace is what's left over from the actual physical grape. So it's going to be skin, it's going to be seeds, it might be stems. It's all that physical grape waste that was not used. In white wine, the pomace is created, extracted before fermentation, and that's why those wines are white. If they're on the skin for a little bit, they might be orange, or when they sit on the skins and it's a red grape, they're red, like this. So in red wine, the pomace is extracted after fermentation. For every 2 bottles of wine made, there's 1 bottle of grape pomace or grape waste left over. So that's a lot of waste. There are a lot of wineries out there that will compost that. There's also the wine style Paquette that we talked about a little bit last week, where it's a second fermentation using those skins, where it's a lighter, lower ABV wine. It's a great field drinking wine. Think Saison farmhouse style parallel in beer. And then lastly, grape pomace has many potential uses beyond the winery. So grape seed oil that you see in cooking is often made from the pomace. Their skincare products are made from the pomace to use those. Yeah, but there's the word for the. I used to be in whole body. No, it's some of the antioxidants in there. But so those are often used for skincare products. Fine liquor like grappa, and there's different names for that across the different countries, can be made from that. We will, when we post the video and post the slideshow, we will have a link to a great article from Wine Folly about different uses for pomace. All right, so let's get into today's light-bodied wines. All right, so first up we have a Gamay. So we should all be tasting this Georges Duboeuf Beaujolais Volage. So go on and turn in your book to page 98 is the Gamay page. So, all right. There are really only two main light red grapes, Gamay and Pinot Noir. Gamay is going to be a little bit lighter in fruit, pretty light in body, low in tannins. It's a little bit higher in acidity, and then a little bit lower in alcohol. So let's go on and swirl that up. What are you guys smelling as we first start swirling this? Getting a little bit of sour cherry,
raspberry jam,
nice.
Strawberry and sour cherry.
Yeah, a lot of that bright red fruit. And we were talking about that bright, vibrant color. See a lot of that red, fresh, acidic fruit come through in this. Let's go on and taste. All right. It's a little more tannic than I expected. Nice acidity. What are you guys getting?
Amanda says tar.
Tar, yeah. Amanda, did you get that on the nose or did you get that on the palate?
On the nose.
On the nose, yeah. Same.
Strawberry over here at Louisville.
All right. So when we say Beaujolais, and we say it's Beaujolais Volage, so there are three quality levels or three tiers in Beaujolais. So just plain Beaujolais or Beaujolais Nouveau is the basic tier. Beaujolais Nouveau is that first wine. It's released right after that first pressing, the Thursday before Thanksgiving. And that's that bright, young, fruity, acidic Beaujolais. And then the next up, that mid-range in quality is Volage. And that where it's from kind of helps determine that. And then Beaujolais Cru is limited in where it can come from. I believe there are 10 Beaujolais Crus. I was going to say 8, but Wine Folly says 10. There's 10.
Shannon says clean light berry, and Amanda says dirt in the mouth.
Yeah. All right, if you have 2 glasses, leave that one in there and pour the Pinot Noir into your second glass so we can compare these two guys. So for Pinot Noir, our DC, Kentucky, Virginia, Ohio stores have this Cloud Veil. It's an Oregon Pinot Noir from the Dundee AVA. And then Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland, you guys have Cloud Line. I always have to check to see which one's which. All right, here you go. right, so you can see already, this is a little bit, it's a little bit lighter in color. This is so not how you look at the color of wine. Are you guys able to see that? Yeah, that's totally worthless. All right, if you have them in front of you, look at them next to each other. For me, this Pinot Noir in my glass is a little bit more rusty colored. It's not, doesn't have those like blues and purples that the Gamay did. Does still have some nice tears though. Ooh. I love Oregon Pinot. Sulfur on the nose of the Cloud Veil. Yeah. Light, fruity. I get a little bit of Gunsmoke actually. A little that like light smoky, kind of like that sulfur that Mike that you were saying. Smoky like cigars, yeah. All right, let's go on and taste. All right, some nice acid on that. So very nice and bright and cleansing of the palate. What else are you guys, what flavors are you tasting in there?
Red fruit, tobacco, smoked meat.
Yeah. Yeah, I get a little bit of that smoked meat. It's almost bacony, which isn't super traditional for this.
Tobacco.
But I get it.
Tobacco and leather.
Yeah, leather for sure.
Oak.
Yeah, and so those
Smoky dirt.
and a lot of those are those secondary flavors, right? And the tertiary flavors where that's coming from the oak and coming from that aging process. Shannon's smoky dirt, he's pit barbecuing in his backyard. All right, so if you have both of them out still, make sure you smell them compared to each other. When I smell them next to each other, I get a lot more fruit on the nose of that Gamay. And I get a little bit more spice on the nose of the Pinot. A little bit peppery and herby. Yeah, tobacco, smoke, leather, dark plum. Cool, and that's from the Cloud wine, not the Cloud Veil. Good stuff. Another thing with Pinot Noir, so Pinot Noir you can see kind of balance between pretty light and a little bit heavier depending on where it's grown. As always, the cooler climate gives you a little bit more of that bright acidic flavor, whereas the warmer climates have a little bit more fruit forward, a little bit more rounded. And that's part of what can be so different between, say, like Oregon and a California Pinot. Also, the type of oak used and the style can make a big difference as well. All right. It is time for medium bodied. All right. Medium-bodied wines. They are often referred to as food wines per their excellent ability to pair with a wide range of foods. They are broadly characterized by dominant red fruit flavors. So if you guys remember back in that first chapter when we were looking at, I'm going to find the page here real quick, we were looking at pairings. So flip back real quick and look at page 34, 35, 36, 37. You'll see that light red pairs with some things there. Let's pull this guy up. You can see that. Where light red is pairing with some of those guys across the board, but those medium-bodied reds, that's where we see a lot more lines. There's a lot more connections there. The reason for that being those medium-bodied wines can hold up to more food. You don't want your food to overwhelm the wine because then you lose it, but those medium-bodied wines balance a lot better against more foods. So let's flip back to here. All right, so medium-bodied wines, the process for this starts out kind of similar to light-bodied wines, where the red wine grapes are collected and sorted to remove leaves, and then the grape bunches are destemmed. So you don't usually see a medium body wine that is fermented with the stem. The reason for that being the grape already has enough tannin in it. To add those stems would probably throw it way out of balance. We would then have way too much tannins in the wine. It wouldn't be very delicious. Next, the juice ferments with the skins in the fermentation vessel. So just like we saw with the light bodied. The wine is gently pressed off the pomace, which we all know what that means now. Then wine is aged in barrels or tanks for a period of time. So it's a little bit more common to see a little bit more barrel aging in the medium-bodied wines. During the aging, just like we talked about a minute ago, the malolactic bacteria converts the green apple-y malic acid into the creamy lactic acid. So you get that creamier mouthfeel. And then wines are clarified, bottled, and released after a period of aging. So whereas the light whites come out pretty quickly, the light reds come out pretty quickly. The medium-bodied reds are going to spend a little bit more time in aging to balance out and round out and be ready to release. All right, so we have 4 medium-bodied reds. There are a ton of medium-bodied red grapes. I'm sure you saw that as you guys were looking through your books this week, where on that first page with the light-bodied red wine, we're only looking at 2 grapes there, right? Then we move to the medium-bodied, that list got a lot longer. So we have a couple more. So we're going to try 4 medium-bodied red wines. The first up is going to be the Grenache, or Grenache, but this is Spanish, so it's Grenache. We have the Las Rocas Grenache, and like I just hinted there, same grape, different place, so different name. There we go. So open up to page 112 in your book. Most Grenache is actually grown in France. And then right after that, Spain is the next largest country of production. Ooh, that smells delicious. Okay, and then like we were saying, so this is a Spanish one, so we're going to taste, typically when you're comparing wine regions, your Spanish wine regions are going to have more raspberry and clove, whereas your French regions would have more dried strawberry and herbs. So let's taste it and see, does this fit into that typical mold, or is it a little bit different? All right. Allie and Jerry in Louisville say leather and lavender on the nose. Oh yeah, absolutely yes. And I probably should have put this in the wine email this week. We opened these calls about half an hour before, we opened these bottles about half an hour before the call started to let them breathe a little bit. So especially if you didn't do that, make sure you're giving it a really good swirl to aerate that so you can help open that up, loosen up some of those tannins and get some of those more delicate flavors. Yeah, Sean, give that a real aggressive swirl and see if that alcohol on the nose lessens at all. It might not, but that should help. All right, so let's get a taste. That's tasty. So I get a lot of fruit up front. What specifically are you guys tasting?
Aaron from Springhouse says raspberry, fig, clove, black pepper, brown sugar.
Yeah. I get some clove. I'm getting raspberry for sure.
Plums and leather from SOS.
Yeah, I agree, South Street. I even get a little bit of prune, a little bit of that deeper, richer flavor.
Fruit and black pepper at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tasty. What do you guys think? Did you guys like the Grenache? A little anise. What I like about this wine is that it hits you with so much fruit up front, but then it kind of balances out and becomes a little bit more tannic towards the finish. Which is part of, again, why it can be so good with food. Yeah, so if you have a newer wine drinker that likes wines that are a little bit more sweeter and fruit forward, it's great to go with a California Grenache because that's going to be usually a little bit more fruit forward. Like a Paso Robles is going to be a nice big full mouth of fruit, whereas that older world style tends to be a little bit more minerally, a little bit better with food pairing, like this guy is. Pruny and spicy at the end, yeah. It's tasty. Let's go on and pour glass number 2 of our medium bodied red. So this is where we have a Côte de Rhône Rouge. So we should all be drinking the M. Chapoutier, there we go, Côte de Rhône Rouge. Côte de Rhône you might also hear called a GSM blend, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre. And that is what it means when you have a Rhône style blend from somewhere else. They're referencing those 3 grapes that are used for that blend. All right, so right away I'm seeing darker here. Ooh. So I'm going to be interested to see how the order we set up goes for this call today. For a lot of these wines, it depends on the actual bottle of wine and where it's from in the vintage in terms of what order we should be tasting them in. So it'll be interesting to see how we feel about the order, if it overwhelms the wine before it or if underwhelms the wine after it. Learning. All right, so what are we seeing? Yeah, ruby color for sure, Sean. It's got a little bit of that more, that bluey purple. I'm getting a little bit of blackberry.
Pretty spicy.
Pretty spicy? Let's taste it. That's tasty. Yeah, this would be a great wine with food. I'm definitely getting a lot of that, like those mouth drying tans on the end that pulls it out, which is why it can go so well with food. I'm getting some leather again.
Some of that sweaty saddle.
Sweaty saddle? Are you really, or are you just saying it because you wanted to? I actually got a little bit of camphor. We're talking about the camphor from the oak. What are we seeing here? Heavy fruit as well as something else that you can't quite pinpoint. I hate it when that happens.
That's sweaty saddle.
So Sean, when you have something that you're having trouble pinpointing, what I try to do is I try to think through, everybody has something that works a little different for them. Oftentimes when I taste wine, I taste it in colors. So I will associate a color with it in my head. Some people associate wine and they will associate it with sounds in terms of like different timbre. Think like if you're at the orchestra and you hear the oboe versus the clarinet. That can sometimes help me then kind of pinpoint what that flavor is that I wasn't able to taste before. If I'm like, you know what, I taste a little bit more purple in that. And then I kind of in my head, what else do I call purple? And it helps me find that.
Dawn says it smells boozy and like grape robitussin.
Interesting. That's if robitussin tasted like this, I would have thought it a lot less as a child. There is some of that grapey though. I hear you. Sean, vanilla, yeah. Vanilla or caramel? Absolutely, and that can come from that barrel aging. Yum. All right. Let's move along. Oh, and another fun thing about that. So what did you taste that was similar in terms of the Grenache and then that blend? Because there is that same grape in both of them. So that first one where we had the plain Grenache, then after that we had the blend. Were you able to taste those notes that came through? Would you have known that that grape was in that blend? If we didn't say it? All right. Up next, I think we have the Merlot. All right. So up next we have the Velvet Devil Merlot. This is a Charles Smith wine. Ooh, possibly some presentation. There we go. Charles Smith wine from Washington. So everybody should be on this one as well. We should all be tasting the same wine there. Yeah. Right away, the color difference on this strikes me. It certainly is a little bit more ruby, a little bit dustier looking in color. Nice tears on there. Nice long unbroken tears. So Merlot again, a lot. Oh, okay. So Sean and Shannon, are you guys saying that you? Gotcha. You tasted more similarity between the Pinot Noir and the GSM. Cool. Interesting. All right. So what are we smelling here? So Andrew says red fruit, buttery, and a little bit of alcohol. I definitely get that buttery from that malolactic fermentation.
Andrew says red fruit, buttery, alcohol, and smell. Shannon, lots of butter, vanilla, raspberry. Jacob, oak.
Yeah. So another thing when you're smelling, I think I've said this on calls before, you will smell different things depending on where on the glass you have your nose. So smell at the edge. I get a little bit more of that lighter, more delicate kind of buttery fruit on the edge, but when I stick my nose right in the middle, I'm getting a lot more of that oak and that tar and that leather. So make sure you're smelling different parts of the glass. It's cool how that changes your perspective on it. All right, let's taste. This is a good little wine. I think that's a really nice balance between that fruit and those tannins, where it really kind of plays in your mouth, where it starts out with that like lovely fruit, but it's quickly balanced by the tannin, so it doesn't taste super sweet. I get a little bit of blueberry and blackberry. You guys getting raspberry on the nose? Yeah, for sure. And this is a wine from Washington, I think. Trying to remember if we had a Washington wine on last week. There's some delicious wines out of Washington. If you ask Allie, she'll tell you all about it.
Amanda says she's getting floral but can't pinpoint the flower.
Getting a little bit of violet in terms of floral note. Yeah.
Getting a lot of potting soil.
Mm-hmm. And now is a good time too, as it's spring. Make sure you're out there smelling things. Smell those flowers, because there's flowers blooming everywhere. Look like the crazy person on your walk. Stop and smell all the flowers, and it'll set you up better each time you go to taste wine. All right. Okay, time for our last medium-bodied wine. All right, so we're jumping from New World back to Old World. Our next one up, we have a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. So Montepulciano is the grape. And then the d'Abruzzo refers to where it's from. So just like we saw on the Beaujolais Village, where it was a Gamay grape, but it's from Beaujolais within the, and that's what determines the name. That's what we're looking at here. So we've got a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. The Virginia, DC, Ohio, Kentucky stores should be tasting the Grand Conti. Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New Jersey. You're tasting a different one that I don't remember at the moment.
Wexford has the Toscana.
Yeah, that sounds right. Oh, that's the Rufino, right? Okay. Yes, because you didn't have the Montepulciano. All right. So color on this, I'm seeing a little bit more red. Or sorry, a little bit more, yeah, a little bit less rust, a little bit deeper red color than we saw on that Merlot. No, that's not true. Than we saw on the Côte d'Ivoire. I'm getting confused. What are you smelling on the nose there?
Sulfur, raspberry.
This is a much more delicate nose than I was anticipating. There's
Sean at Wexford says the Toscano is a deep ruby, almost purple color.
Yeah. Yes.
Travis says tar, olive brine, black currant.
I'm getting a little bit of boysenberry. I went to school in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and they had this amazing little Mennonite family that would make boysenberry donuts. That's why I know what a boysenberry is. And those are good too.
Yeah, he's getting cherry pie.
Cherry pie. All right, let's taste it. Ooh, yum. All right, I got a lot of fruit on that. Got some sour cherry, some red berry jam, some cranberry. What are you guys getting? Plummy with hints of jam. Oak and clove, oak wet horse. Oh, Sean, because you're tasting this is coming. So Montepulciano, you would think it's all grown in Italy. It's not. There's a little bit grown in Argentina and a little bit grown elsewhere, but by and large, the vast majority of Montepulciano you see is going to be from Italy.
Stephen Lancaster is asking what would be a great pairing for a cheese with the Montepulciano.
Let's think it through. All right, so Montepulciano. So we're looking a little bit more tannic. So I think you could have something that needs that fat cleared off your palate. Why don't you flip to, flip to page 34 and let's look at it and see. So when we're looking there, we're talking medium bodied, delicate, nutty, strong and firm, as well as pungent. So you've got a lot of options here.
Shannon suggests the cranberry Wensleydale.
That would be a fun one to do because you've got that would play on that cranberry note that we're tasting in the wine. I always love blue cheeses with red wines. That's always what I want to do. I would think like a I'm forgetting the crema ficata would be delicious. And any soft ripened blue would be really tasty with this. I think it's I do think it's bright enough that you could even do like a blue goat with this. Thank you, Shannon. Cambozola was exactly what I was trying to think of. What else, guys? You're quiet out there today. Yeah, Cambozola is delicious. Anybody else have a cheese that they think would be great with this? Manchego? Yeah, that little bit of that, especially I think, would you go younger Manchego or older Manchego? Would you want a little bit more tangy or more salty? What do you think, Michael? Younger? Yeah, that's what I would do too. I think it would be delicious either way, but that would certainly be my preference. Gruyere? Yeah, absolutely. You could even go with like a Gruyere heavy fondue would be tasty with this. Yeah. So a lot of options is basically what we got there. It's hard to go wrong when you're pairing cheese with a medium-bodied red wine because they are so flexible in terms of pairing, and that's why we were talking about them being great food wines. Good with grilled meat, good with cheese. They work with a lot of different spices. Something salty. Yes, we're saying pecorino locatelli. I think especially if that's in food. Cool. All right. Let's jump on ahead to full-bodied reds. Okie dokie. All right. So full-bodied reds typically have higher tannins, opaque ruby color, and this is coming from the high anthocyanin content. I looked it up, and I don't remember how to say it. Anthocyanin content and rich fruit flavors. Start the sentence again. Typically, full-bodied red wines have high tannin, opaque ruby color from the high anthocyanin content and rich fruit flavors. They can be enjoyed on their own or with equally bold flavored foods. So just like we were talking about not wanting to overwhelm the wines in the orders that we were tasting them, you wouldn't want to overwhelm your wine with your food or vice versa. So full-bodied wines are going to have a slightly narrower scope in terms of food pairing because we want to make sure that that food can hold up to what that big full-bodied wine is bringing to the table. Okay. Anthocyanin, what is it? So anthocyanin is the pigment responsible for the red color in wine. It is found in the skins of the grapes. It's present in many other fruits, such as plums, blueberries, cherries, and even flowers like orchids and hydrangeas. So this pigment is not just unique to grapes. It's found in a bunch of different things throughout the fruit and flower family. The anthocyanin is released while the skins soak in the juice, so it's literally staining the wine. It's also what will stain your floor if you spill it. So it's that pigment that stains the color of the juice. And that's why, remember last week we were talking about how with those white wines you can use a red or a white grape because you're taking it off the skin right away. This is what makes that difference. When the skins stay in there, that color pigment from the skin then stains the juice, and that's what takes us from, or that's color-wise, it takes us from a white wine to a red wine. The pigment is sensitive to both temperature and sulfites. So wines that are fermented at high temperatures or have a higher sulfur addition will have less color intensity. So just because it's found in the grape skin doesn't mean it's going to make a full colored wine. Based on how that process goes in the winemaking, what's added, what's not, the temperature during the fermentation, it can mellow out. Also, wines lose pigment as they age. So after you age a wine for 5 years, it can lose as much as 85% of the anthocyanin. So if you were to taste so really good, like really great quality Pinots, like let's say a Bordeaux, or let's say a really nice Pinot from an Oregon producer that is made and balanced to age. If you taste that fresh, It's going to have a little bit brighter, a little bit richer of a color, but as you taste it after it's aged longer, it's much more tawny in color, much dustier, much rustier. Think kind of when we were tasting those ports and we saw that little bit more oxidized color, we start to get closer to that the longer wine ages. There, again, we will have this when we post the PowerPoint, a link to a really fantastic article from Wine Folly that gives some good visual examples of anthocyanin. It has a nice little partial color wheel where it shows kind of where the wines fall, and you can see how the age. Okay, that's you. Wonderful. All right. If you've never been in Kentucky for a ginormous storm, you should go. It's terrifying. And that's what we're seeing in Louisville right now. Okay, so I don't remember where I was, so I'm going to go back to the wines are clarified, bottled, released after a period of aging. So depending on the harvest year, depending on how much sun the grapes got, how ripe they got, how much rain they got, how it's blended out. If the blend comes out a little bit more tannic or more acidic, that will dictate how long the wine is going to be good to be aged. And some wines have to be aged longer based on that vintage or based on the blend if they've blended it to be aged. So full-bodied wines aged for longer. Yeah, our customers are talking heavy about the adding of sulfur wines. Okay, so this is a little bit more complicated than a yes/no question. There are different types of sulfites, and different styles of wine will have different levels of sulfites, different levels of being sulfured. I don't think you can make just kind of a broad market statement saying that USA wines are sulfured more than Old World wines. I think it's more going to be geared towards style of wine, varietal of wine, and then just also as a spinning into something else from that point. Oftentimes tannins can be what is giving people headaches as well. So it's worth, if you have somebody that's concerned about that, have them try a lower tannin wine, have them try a white wine that's going to be a lot lighter in that way and see how they feel after it. Okay, along that same vein, could you explain what's up with natural wines? Yes, so natural wines often means low intervention wines. So at the end of all of these guys, the processes where we say wines are clarified, bottled, and released after a period of aging. With a natural wine or a low intervention wine, usually that means the wines are not clarified. They go from fermentation into being bottled. So it's basically when you look at the process, anywhere that people are doing something to the wine that they could skip and still have wine, that's being done. They're skipping that step to still have wine. So clarification, instead of having it filtered, fining it, so you have that much more clear, less foggy, for lack of a better word, cloudy wine. Most wine's going to be fined or filtered, whereas a natural wine often is not. When we talk orange wine and how that works for natural, earlier we were talking about the pomace and the grapes being removed from the skins. If in white wine you leave them on the skin, so you skip that step of removing that part of the grape in the winemaking process, that's when you get the orange wines. You're having that skin contact. So that's another case of where you're skipping a step that you don't have to take necessarily, and it gives you a slightly different product. It can also have to do with the yeast. Most winemakers, just like most brewers, are using lab-grown yeasts, and that's it's not like a GMO thing, but that is in terms of consistency in wine. So if you're using the same yeast each time, you have a lot more that's in your control, and you have a lot more ability to control your end product and that flavor profile. Natural wines, sometimes you'll have a little bit more spontaneous yeast, where that will make it a lot more distinct in terms of where it's from, and that can also create a lot more variance from vintage to vintage, because the yeast you're getting from the environment can be a little bit different. The wines that we're just now rolling out in DC, Virginia, they should have launched yesterday, those Old Westminster Wine Company and the Better Wine Company wines. Those are natural wines with a minimal intervention. So if you tasted the raw rosé last year and then you taste the raw rosé this year, they do taste pretty different. I mean, they're still rosés, but the fruit's a little bit different. The body's a little bit different. It's not the exact same wine because they are going more natural with the process. Versus if you were to taste like the Meiomi rosé from last year and this year, they're blending that to taste the exact same. Like when we talked about champagnes, like Veuve is always blending that wine to taste the exact same, whereas a grower chard might taste different batch to batch because they're not going for that. They're going for a delicious wine, not the exact same wine. That felt like a rambly answer, but I hope that helped, Amy. Does that help, or do you have a more specific question within that? And while you're thinking on that, let's launch into the full-bodied wines. And then it looks like Patricia from Virginia Beach is saying also in terms of the headaches, she's done a bit of research on this. It's most likely the histamines on the grape skins that are sulfites. Yeah, it can be a lot of things that cause the headaches. Everybody's body is different, so different things cause different problems for different people. It is really, really important to remember that whenever we're talking to a customer about this, Whole Body is a whole training about it called Deshay training, where we can never tell a customer this will or won't give you a headache or this will or won't help. You can absolutely guide them towards resources where they can read about it themselves. You could say these are some of the different things that affect your body, but do remember not to tell them, oh yeah, this will be fine, or don't drink that. All right. Does yours say recording has started? Yes, I'm recording. Okay, cool. It looks like Allie and I both might be recording. Okay, thank you guys for all your patience today. Okay, so Malbec. So this is the Brocal Malbec. It is from Mendoza, Argentina. This is going to be the first in our 3 full-bodied. Yum, it smells delicious. So right off the bat, I'm getting a little bit more oak on the nose. And some of that comes from it just being in the barrel a little bit longer. Some of it comes from it being New World oak as opposed to French oak. Get a little bit of licorice too. Interesting.
Shannon says oak, plum, tobacco. Wow, it's vanilla.
Vanilla? Yeah, I get some sweet tobacco for sure. I get some black cherry.
Mm-hmm. Black raspberry.
I get a little bit of that milk chocolate. And you can see on this guy, as we're getting the higher alcohol, see those, oh, you can see it there, much longer legs or tears on this guy. I like how this starts with a little bit of a fruit pop up front again, and then balances out into that little bit more tannic. It's a little bit hot in terms of it having a little bit stronger, a little bit more alcohol, so I get a little bit of that heat at the back of my throat. Some cocoa. What else are you guys tasting? Oak for sure, a little smoke and a little spice. Black cherry along with vanilla, oak, and cacao nibs. Yep. It's a lot of Malbec love. I love Malbec. Whenever I have dinner with my grandfather, I bring Malbec, and then I giggle at how he says Malbec.
How does he say Malbec?
It's kind of hard to recreate. He says like Molbeck. He changes out the vowel. Yeah. Okay, so next up, I think what we want to taste next is we're going to go for the decoy cab. So I went back and forth on this because in general, the Nero d'Avola grape can have a little bit less body and can be yeah, there's not a right or a wrong order to taste these in, and I'm anticipating a little bit more fruit on this cab, so I'm thinking this is going to go better second in our last three, but we'll see. So we should be drinking the Decoy, Sonoma County Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a great one when someone's like, I just want a good cab. What's a good straight cab? Decoy is just a consistent, delicious cab.
Smells delicious.
Does smell very good, yeah. I get some cranberry immediately. Yeah, Sean's saying more body than the Malbec we tried a couple weeks ago when we were comparing the two. I agree, yes. 136. Okay. I'm smelling some red currant, some cranberry, some raspberry, lots of red fruit. Get a little bit of graphite and pencil lead. Jammy. Yeah, that's a word you can often use in conjunction with California Reds. All right. See the nice long legs on there. Yeah, for sure. For sure, Jimmy. Some nice fruit up front. Yeah, but I think that tannin flush comes pretty soon after to kind of cleanse the palate there. I get some smoke and some charcoal, pipe tobacco, mocha. Aaron from Springhouse is saying mocha, vanilla, leather smoke,
Molasses.
little molasses. Yeah, a little bit not sweet. What about in terms of herbal and floral? What are you getting there? Red bell pepper from Eric. Black cherry, smoke wood, vanilla tobacco, red fruit from Shannon. Oregano from Newport News. Spearmint from Gin in Dublin.
Getting some oregano.
Yeah, I get a lot of that black pepper we hear a couple people saying. Ooh, jalapeno. I always want to taste jalapeno. I don't think I usually do though. A good one. All right, we're running close on time from all our technical difficulties. Let's jump on to the last wine. So the last one we have up is the Villa Pazzi Nero d'Avola. This is a wine it is usually grown in Sicily. This particular one is from Sicily. All right. Ooh. Immediately I get it's a lot darker of a nose. It gives me that sensation of like, when you walk into, so I'm not saying it's musty, but you know when you walk into like a dark kind of cold basement room, that like feeling that you get? I get that on the nose. So Travis, you're saying you get a little bit of a funky nose on there? Get a little bit of plum. I definitely get some clay dust.
I'm getting some tobacco.
Tobacco. Get a little dried strawberry. Look at those. Can make that some nice long tears. Let's taste.
Some wood smoke.
Yeah, wood smoke. I got some chili pepper on that. For sure. Ooh. Wood smoke. Let's say clay dust. What else are we hearing? Fruity and dry. Ooh, the nose smells like garlic. That's you might have a corked bottle. That's not it might be worth later on opening up another bottle of this at a point where you can sample it out to your customers and see if you still taste that, Steve, because that's possibly a flaw in your bottle as opposed to something that should be there. Licorice. Good stuff. Yeah, Nerodavila is the most planted red grape on the island of Sicily, so that's why you see a lot of Nerodavila from Sicily. All right. Well, guys, do you have any more questions before we wrap it up? We're right at 2. All right, well, if not, thank you for joining. Always so good to hang out with you guys in this way. Look forward to the quiz will be coming out this week, and then the wines for quiz or for call 5 will be coming out. And as always, cheers.